Rendering materials. So here's the rendering that we've been looking at throughout our course. And we've been using this as sort of a guide and making sure that we can do something that's similar to this. Now let's compare this to the rendering that we did. Okay, so here we are. This is on the sheet where we dragged and dropped that rendering from the project browser onto the sheet. And you can see that it's similar, but we could do one of those games like, where do you see the differences? And there's a few differences, and one of the main differences is the material. And there are different materials from one and the other, not too many, but one I wanted to point out was the microwave. So you can see in this one, this is just a, sort of like a white, or you could maybe say it's ivory. And in the one we're using as a base, it looks like there's some stainless steel, some black glass finish or something like that. So if we go back to our interior 3D view, this is our interior camera view. I'm just going to click on interior. You can click on things here. This is a good place to do this. You can click on an object and then you can find information about it. And one of the things we're going to look at is the material. Now you can see in the properties, there's really nothing here talking about material, but you have to go into the type in this case. So I'm going to go to edit type. And notice here right away, materials and finishes, microwave material. I'm going to give you a little warning here. Families can vary. So you could have a family made by someone else and maybe they categorized the microwave material under identity data. It doesn't really matter what category it's in. What matters is what's here on the right, and that's the value. If I click on this value and I click on this little extra button, that'll take me to the materials dialog box. We're just going to really spend a little bit of time looking at this. We're not going to spend a lot of time going in depth into materials and custom materials. But what we're going to look at here is there's the material that's being used. That's laminate, ivory, matte. That's the name of it. You can make new ones if you want. I could call this one material 2 if I wanted to, or I could call it glass 1, whatever you want it to be. I usually avoid things like, microwave or something like that, because then if you want to use the microwave material on a wall, it looks weird. Why would I use something called microwave on a wall? Even if it was the right material, the naming is somewhat important. So we're going to call this one maybe stainless 1. Now, what is a material in Revit? What's the definition? Well, you have a number of different tabs on the right-hand side, and under graphics, you have things like the shading color, you have a surface pattern, and you have a cut pattern. What are all these things? Well, maybe I wanted the surface pattern, I want to pick a hatch. So I can go down here and pick a hatch. Maybe I want to use something stippled like this, the one used for gypsum plaster. These hatches, if I go into edit, these can be brought in from AutoCAD.pat files. They're a very common CAD hatch pattern. You can make your own, and they've been around for years. And there's lots out there, so you can bring those in. So you can bring in a surface pattern, that'll be on the outside of the object. And then a cut pattern is the hatch when you cut through it. So maybe I do a diagonal pattern. Now on the right-hand side, you have the color. And that's the color of the hatch itself. So if I choose gray and I choose blue or something like that, then those will be the colors of the hatches. The shading color is the color of the overall object when it's shaded. Let's come back to this though. We're going to go to Render Appearance. And this is where you can go and click on the Replace button. And you can look through the installed library. And there's just a number of different things that you can pick. And we were going to use stainless. So we want to go to metals. And we could just go to metal like that. We could go maybe to steel. And we could look for something. There's stainless brushed, stainless hammered. There's satin brush. So there's lots of different options there. And we can use that. Now, of course, you can go through this and really get in depth as to sort of what type is it. There's a lot of customization that's easy to do. So we have the stainless brushed metal material, and this is just out of the standard library of materials. And again, we found that through clicking on the Replace button. If we go back to graphics, you'll notice something here. Under shading, you can say Use Render Appearance for shading. And that tends to be a good one. This will approximate the color of the material that you have chosen. And of course, you can uncheck it and choose any color from the rainbow that you want. All right, when we say OK to that and OK to that, let's just zoom in. So you'll notice there, this has a bit of a surface pattern that we put on. Of course, we don't really want to keep that on there like that, but it doesn't hurt. And if we were to render this, it would be a stainless material. So virtually every object has materials. One more thing I'm going to point out in our materials section, and that is the material of the ceiling versus the wall. You'll notice in our rendering, both in the sample and in the one we did, the ceiling has a different rendering material than the roof and the wall. And let's check that out. So if I click on the wall, that's called IP1, I'm going to click on Edit Type. And where do we find the material? Well, under Structure, you can click on Edit. So right here, this is the material. And right now it's just saying by category. So whatever the default material for walls is, that's exactly what it's going to be. Now we could change that. And what's interesting about this is it's automatically going to take you to the material you just made. And if I went through here, maybe I just scan through these. There's woods, there's some basic roofing, there's wall. Let me type in P, there's paint of no really specific color yet. We could do different types of paints if we wanted to. If we were to pick the same material for both the roof, the ceiling, and the walls, then when we render it, you wouldn't have that difference in color when you render. So let's click on the ceiling. Let's check out what that is. We're going to go edit. And we can see here that the finish, that's what we're looking at right on the outside of that. That's gypsum wallboard. That's a material. Let's click on that. So you can see it has sort of a gray look to it. And if we were to maybe just go down to another material like that same one we used, I'm just going to type in P, and we could say paints and coatings. If you can see here, it's the wall paint, there's the color, and it's really just sort of a whitish gray color. Then we say OK to that. So now the wall and the ceiling is the same material. And that's how the materials basically work. Now we could go ahead and render this again if you want. I'm going to stick with the rendering that we had. I'm okay with this. If I go down to the sheet, which is right here, that's fine. We're going to stick with that. But if you'd like to render it again and change up materials, you're free to do that.